This is one. It's not niche, but it is one that I found. But it doesn't get weird in this, and we have not covered this on the show. Do you know what clip this is, Andy?
Oh yes, yes I do.
Okay, let's with the election coming tomorrow, this is one of the brightest minds speaking on our election.
If you allow your 2-year-old to smear the contents of his diapers on the wall of your living room, and you do nothing about it, if you allow your 14-year-old to light a joint at the breakfast table, if you allow your hormone-addled 15-year-old daughter to like slam the door of her bedroom and give you the finger, you're going to get more of it. And those kids are going to wind up in rehab. It's not good for you, and it's not good for them. No. There has to be a point at which dad comes home. Yeah, that's right. Dad comes home. And he's pissed. Dad is pissed. He's not vengeful. He loves his children. Disobedient as they may be, he loves them. Because they're his children, they live in his house. But he's very disappointed in their behavior. And he's going to have to let them know. He's going to have to get to your room right now and think about what you did. And when dad gets home, you know what he says? You've been a bad girl. You've been a bad little girl, and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now. And no, it's not going to hurt me more than it hurts you. No, it's not. I'm not going to lie. This is going to hurt you a lot more than it hurts me. And you earned this. You're getting a vigorous spanking because you've been a bad girl. And it has to be this way. It has to be this way because it's true. And you're only going to get better when you take responsibility for what you did. That's not said.
I came in.
Not said in the spirit of
on the line of vigorous spanking because you've been a bad girl.
Justice.
Wait, have you seen this clip, Ben?
I actually have. It'd be much funnier if I was doing this totally out of context. And the first thing I heard was vigorous spanking because you've been a bad girl.
You leave us alone for like 1 second. Let's
best thing there is.
This is
and without it,
guys, this is maybe a little too adult content for GTAA.
He really, yeah. I don't think
GTAA
I'd actually
After Dark.
Yeah. He really felt. I don't know if I had actually watched the full thing. I think it was more sexual than I thought it would be.
Oh yeah. I've seen this before. It is like, I mean, you can't say this stuff in public, man.
You know, the worst thing is since the first time I saw it, and actually I just watched it last night, Class of 1999, the classic B sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
And one of the scenes, one of the teachers decides to start spanking this. They have these, basically they hire, they bring in military robots to teach kids at like demilitarized zone schools in future America and the far future of 1999. It's like basically Hillary Clinton watched this and thought it was a documentary and started talking about super predators. And so like he takes these, he grabs these two kids, drags them to the front of the class, stands on one of them while he spanks the other one. And it is just the most bizarre scene. And I'm just imagining Tucker Carlson as that, killer android spanking a student. And that's a mental image I didn't need.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I kind of, well, let's put it this way. I think that, one of my most conservative takes is that I think that shame really has a valuable role to play. And, it's a mistake to, it's a mistake to teach people not to be ashamed of things. It's like, yeah, no, you should feel some shame here. You shouldn't just like say this out loud. Like the same, it's the same deal with that Trump thing it was the usual dumbass Trump news cycle where Trump says something kind of crazy and then people are trying to run with it in the news cycle. and they slightly misrepresent it, and then it's a story about it being misrepresented, and it becomes the fill in the blank hoax or whatever in Trump world. But like the thing with Liz Cheney, where like Trump is trying to make the point that like, oh, she's a chicken hawk. And I do think if you listen to the whole, like the way he starts the sentence, that's where he was going. But then he just gets way too excited thinking about her being killed. It's like, yeah, they're like 9 guys with guns and they're pointing at it. It's like, okay, this is crossing the line of like what you should say out loud.
Yeah. It reminds me, it's very similar to the threats against the young anti-Zionists, where they're like, "Oh, you're a queer supporter of Palestine, so I'd like to see what Hamas would do with you," and they start like getting like weirdly.
I'd like to be in Gaza and string you up for the left
Yeah, and it's like really specific
about this. Like, you're too obviously enjoying the thought.
Like, this didn't happen, right? Like, you're not basing this on anything real, I don't think. I mean, I know you're basing it on their policy toward homosexuality, but it's not like you have a specific thing that happened in your head. You're just freestyling. I think if you're not inflicting your kink in some kind of sublimating it into,
if you just start sublimating it in public this obviously, then yeah, I'd become in favor of shaming it. I think that but yeah, Tucker has been on one. I think
the presence of evil is kickstarting people to wonder about the good.
That's what happened to me.
That's what happened to you?
Oh yeah, I had a direct experience with it.
In the milieu of journalism, or just
nope, in my bed at night, and I got attacked while I was asleep with my wife and 4 dogs in the bed.
I actually haven't seen this. I heard about it.
Physically mauled.
In a spiritual attack by a demon?
Yeah, by a demon, or by something unseen that left.
Is that right?
Claw marks on my sides, on my.
So it left physical marks.
Oh, they're still there. Yeah. 1.5 years ago.
Was your wife terrified? I know you were.
I wasn't. I was totally confused. I woke up and I couldn't breathe, and I thought I was going to suffocate. And I walked around outside, and then I walked in, and my wife and dogs had not woken up, and they're very light sleepers.
I've got some other thoughts about this, but I just want to slip in the fact that the basic shape of what's gone on here is that he was asleep and he was attacked by a demon, and then he woke up and the demon was gone. So
but his dogs were there.
Yeah. So, well, let's just keep going.
And then I had these terrible pains on my rib cage and on my shoulder, and I was just in my boxer shorts, and I went and flipped on the light in the bathroom, and I had 4 claw marks on either side underneath my arms and on my left shoulder, and they're bleeding.
Wait, they were bleeding?
They're bleeding, yeah. No, they're actual claw marks. And I sleep on my side, so I wasn't clawing myself. I don't have long nails. And they didn't fit my hands anyway. But yeah, that happened. So I'm not from a world where things like that happen. I never heard of anything like that happening before. I had no idea what that was. I knew it was spiritual immediately.
You did? Okay, that was going to be my question.
Yeah. I don't understand to this day. I'm not going to put it.
You didn't try to refute the spiritual part in your own mind. You went right into the.
Well, it didn't make any sense, and it doesn't now. But I'm not from a, what do they call it, faith tradition that talks about things like that or even acknowledges their existence. Like, there's nothing like that. I've never heard anybody say anything like that in my whole life.
What was the next day like?
Well, the next morning I woke up and I thought that was the weirdest dream I've ever had. And then I saw blood on my sheets and I realized that was not a dream at all. I called my assistant, who was like the only evangelical Christian I know, well enough to call with something bizarre like that, totally bizarre like that. And she said, oh yeah, no, that happens. Yeah, people are attacked in their bed by demons. What? What are you even talking about? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not leaving anything out, and I'm not pretending to understand that. I can only say what happened to me, and that did happen to me. And then I was seized with this very intense desire to read the Bible, which I then started, without any study aids or anything. I bought a Bible that didn't have any. I'm not interested in editorializing in the Bible. I just want to read it and see what's in there myself.
So he didn't have a
I have
copy.
very low levels of trust for Christian pastors, most of whom,
Apparently.
you know, I'm just not a fan at all. And sorry to say that, but that's how I feel. And so I don't want to hear other people's opinions. I just want to see what's in there. And so I spent a year and a half reading it, and then I started rereading it. And it was just a transformative experience for me. But
yeah. So again, you're asleep. You're attacked by a demon. You wake up. No more demon. I mean, maybe I'm just I'm just such a atheist. I'm just dead inside. But like, on the face of it, we would call that a nightmare, right? I mean, that's what that sounds like. Now, I do understand that he had these mysterious, unexplainable claw marks. On the other hand, I think Andy anticipated my thought about this. One of the first things out of his mouth when he starts describing this is, I was asleep in bed with my wife and my 4 dogs. And the video is just full of imagery, just to do that kind of rustic atmosphere they're going for. It's just full of imagery of him playing with the dogs running around. It's like, there's never any point in this entire video where anybody stops to be like, oh, do you think that the dogs might have told you?
It couldn't be me. I mean, look at my well manicured my fingers, and so that's it.
Yeah. It's like, you have 4 dogs who sleep in the bed with you. That's how is this just not even a possibility?
I mean,
who's registering
the dog doesn't even have to be like attacking him on purpose.
Sure.
The dog could have been being attacked by a demon in his sleep.
Ooh, yeah.
Have you ever seen a dog when they sleep, right? They start running. I'm just saying, there's a lot of things that could have happened, even if we don't want to,
yes, dogs start running in their sleep. Seen it a billion times. I have, or I don't know. I mean, maybe Tucker was having a nightmare, and so he was like thrashing around in bed, and it spooked the dog, and he got a little scratched by the dog in the process. That seems pretty plausible.
Yeah, I mean, I get scratched by my epileptic cat all the time.
I think you mean that you've been attacked by demons all the time.
Yes.
Cats don't attack people, much less epileptic cats.
Yeah. I mean,
No,
sure.
no, Tucker, you're right. He really has been on one, because I remember this is probably about 5 years ago, where some like left-wing friends of mine were kind of like, yeah, they were like a little ashamed, but they're like, I have a soft spot for Tucker. And that's when he was doing all those overtures to people who ended up right-wing anyway, I think. But he was kind of wasn't he doing overtures to like
Jimmy
maybe
Dore?
Yeah, I forget who it was, but he was
Jimmy Dore was definitely on Tucker.
Were the Red Scare? Did he have Red Scare on maybe, or like
probably? That sounds totally plausible.
I know he had a Chris. What's his name?
Chris Smalls, yeah.
Yes, Chris Smalls.
But I think this is even before this.
Yeah,
he had, but he had like more like heterodox leftists. You know what I mean? And like he was giving them a platform. So I think that I would just be curious of anyone who maybe in the same way someone would watch Rogan or be like, at least these people are being platformed, that kind of thing, which you could say legitimately maybe about Rogan. But yeah, I mean, but I'm saying, but now he's really gone off the deep end.
I mean, look, I will say, so Rogan thought and the Tucker thought. The Rogan thought is just like, yeah, look, I mean, Rogan has clearly moved like way to the right in the last couple of years, like no doubt about it, right? I mean, I listened to all 3 hours of his interview with Donald Trump, so I could write about it for Jacobin. Yeah.
But I did listen to all 3 hours of Tim Pool with Sam Cedar to for the show, and there was nothing for us. So
and like, look, I mean, clearly, if you listen to that interview, I mean, Rogan just comes off as a Trump supporter, and whatever. And I think, but it's like also, I have to think that's like, look, to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, man has free will, right? He's gonna, that's, but like, even so, it's like, I think part of what's going on here is like a few years ago when like Rogan, to the extent that he expressed actual policy opinions, which he didn't very often, but to the extent that he did, right, it was like 9 out of 10 were ones that we'd like, but like the right wing was just constantly love bombing him about the 1 out of 10 that they liked. And, most leftists, were just denouncing him about the 1 out of 10. Right. So it's like, I think that, I'm not saying like, oh, that means that Rogan is actually great and everybody should love him or anything. Like, that's not my point here. Right. Like, I just think like, I think strategically there's a lesson to be learned here, right? That I think we have a really bad habit of, there really is some truth to that old thing about how, the left is always looking for heretics to denounce, and the right is always looking for converts.
Yeah, yeah, that's what we were talking about with Jason a bit. And I think Jason's article was definitely touching upon those ideas, and I think what was important, or the one thing we were kind of adding on to that, is even if you do kind of are annoyed by your favorite leftist YouTuber, it's pretty easy to just kind of stop watching, or maybe you could do one tweet where you say, oh, I didn't really like their opinion on that. And then if I think
then just kind of leave it at that. Yeah.
It's like you could healthily just kind of like, if you find yourself,
I mean, it's probably better for your own mental health to do that, but also like, again, I just think like,
yeah,
it's one thing to say that people shouldn't be influenced by this stuff, which is like, fine, sure, they shouldn't be.
No,
but also people are people, right? And they're gonna be. And so like, I think that it's also just, true, and something people should keep into consideration. That it's like, look, when you jump up and down, pointing at somebody and say, you're a horrible reactionary now, I cast you out.
Yeah.
And then other people are like, oh, I love you, brother. Right? Like, who do you think that person is going to be more influenced by in their views in the future, right? The first guy or the second guy? It's like, I don't think this is a hard question, right? Like, I think that I think there are a lot of sort of bad self-reinforcing cycles where we end up, driving people out. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's like, if Glenn Greenwald still got invited on MSNBC during the Obama years, would he have drifted as far in the direction as that, he did as he did? I don't know, right? Yeah. But like, I do tend to think that oftentimes, we shun people for being slightly wrong, or for being, or at least we think they're slightly wrong, whether they are or they're not. But like, even if they really are, right? Even if they really are slightly wrong, right? Like we shun them for being slightly wrong. They hang out with whoever will still have them. People being people, little by little, they're influenced by the views of the people who they're hanging out with now. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? It's like, oh, I told you that person, was moving to the right, right? So that's my Rogan thought.
Yeah.
My Tucker thought is much less broad-minded. I think Tucker, I mean, I guess like, I hate him least when I'm watching him have whatever weird breakdown he's having now, because it's like, at least kind of fascinating. But like, but my Tucker thought is that it's like, look, this guy's always been full of shit, and he's still full of shit. And like, it's not like, the people you're talking about who like, and I don't know, maybe later you'll start, you'll name some names for me when we're off air and be like, oh wait, I shouldn't have been this harsh. But like, the people who you're talking about who are like, oh, I have a soft spot for Tucker. It's like, I mean, I think those people are kind of rubes, right? That's like, it's like that tells me you're kind of an easy mark. Cause it's like, cause if you look at Tucker's whole evolution over the years, right? Like, when I first started watching Tucker Carlson on TV, that was when he was co-hosting Crossfire.
Right.
And like, he was like the ultimate version of what the Chapo guys, like in their book, they have this like scheme for different kinds of conservatives, right? And like one of their categories is the bow tie dipshit. And it's like Tucker Carlson back then in the Crossfire era was the ultimate bow tie dipshit conservative. And when I watched him on Crossfire, he would just blindly defend whatever the Bush administration had done that week, right? In fact, I think one of the first Crossfires, I mean, I'd watched Crossfire before, but one of the first Tucker Carlson Crossfires that stuck in my head was the one where he was defending indefinite detention, right? And then this is the era where this didn't come out until many years later, but this is the era where there's he was on that radio show, and there's that audio of him ranting about how the Iraqis are monkeys and all this stuff.
Right? Bubba the Love Sponge, I believe, is who you're thinking of.
Yes. I'm sorry. I didn't want to erase Mr. the Love Sponge and his work. Yes, Bubba the Love Sponge.
Say his name loud and proud.
Sorry. Yes. Yes. Mr. the Love Sponge, as they'd say on Bill and Ted. Then he did start, to be fair, being more critical of some of the Bush stuff, but then he just became a libertarian. And he was actually a fellow at the Cato Institute, for years. Everybody forgets this, right? But he was. And then he emerged from the Cato Institute and did, into his Fox News era, and he lost the bow tie, and he was oh, I'm a populist now. But he hadn't really changed his mind about any policy issues that I could figure out. I mean, it's the stuff that Tucker is good on is the stuff that libertarians are good on, right? That they, some of the War and Peace stuff, although even there, if you start to listen to him, we talk about China, he actually sounds pretty hawkish, right? And right, I mean, my God, right? We watched it on the show, the Throne of Chinese Skulls. You guys remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So it's I don't know. I mean, he's anti-war except for one of the
worst war that could happen. Yeah.
The worst war that could possibly happen, right? That the Chinese People's Liberation Army is the biggest military force on the planet. Yeah. And I think the U.S. has enough in reserves that if we called everybody up, we would then maybe have more people at arms than they do, but it'd be definitely the biggest and the close second biggest armies in the world going at each other, right? This is the most apocalyptically horrible war that could possibly happen, and that's the one that he's actually a hawk about. And I don't know, he said good stuff about Snowden and whatever, but it's this is good stuff that libertarians might say. And then every actual it's I don't know, he's a populist, really. So it's look, I mean, during the period when Joe Rogan would have spend an hour drinking whiskey with me or Kyle Kalinske or whatever on air, he would actually agree about shit like Medicare for all. Right. I mean, I don't want to overstate how coherent his worldview was. Right. But there were actually some very left-wing things. He'd be oh yeah, sure. Right. Tucker Carlson has never been on board with any of that, ever. Right. So it's I don't, it just seems if you bought Tucker the populist, it seems to me that politically you're an extremely cheap date.
Yeah, I think so. Or I think probably for some people, kind of staying on some of our themes of the night, it probably was very personality based, which is if he's platforming your faves, then he's kind of on your team. Do you know what I mean? Just because you're entertained by those people. So that is the same thing to you. That's also a cheap date, but it's if you're kind of seeing it as entertainment, then as long as the entertain, it becomes less about their actual views than who they're teaming up with and who they're collabing with.
Yeah, right. Because it's look, if you Jimmy Dore, he when he started going on, I don't know how many times he was on, but whatever. I think he was on Tucker a few times, but anyway, whatever, right? But it's explain this to me, right? you think about the way that somebody like Jimmy thinks about like AOC, for example. And, don't get me wrong, I've got my criticisms, but like, I mean, AOC is like one of the one of the biggest advocates in the House of, like most of the things that we would all want, right? And so, like, what possible grading system could you be using to simultaneously be like AOC is a sellout and also Tucker is cool? Like,
I mean, that's
curve.
what gets me about guys like that, or like, because honestly, like, we've probably all had this experience of people saying like, I don't like AOC. I think nothing short of a revolution is sufficient. And we've been too satisfied with. I have a good friend who I have these kind of conversations with all the time.
Sure.
I totally disagree, but I give them that it's like, okay, you kind of have a consistent worldview, right? You just, I just think your premise about how close we are to this type of, contradiction heightening revolutionary moment. We're miles apart on that, but I respect.
Sure.
And also, if this is the type of person that is like willing to like put their body on the line, put their life, you know what I mean? Then they're just so radical and so extreme that most politicians are. I can actually kind of respect that, even though I don't think it's what we need to win. But I guess I respect their worldview, right? Especially, maybe not so much a keyboard warrior, but someone who's out there getting arrested, right? Living that life versus someone who's like, AOC is a crazy sellout, but I also like Tucker Carlson, and I don't support Medicare for all anymore. I support RFK. Like, I'm not really endorsing any kind of like revolution, any coherent. I'm just picking people I like and don't like based on some kind of arbitrary system. Maybe not even arbitrary, just based
I think we watched on the show a little bit of like Jimmy's interview with Cornel West, where he's like, okay, I think, I actually think, I want to call balls and strikes here, right? I actually think like some of his criticisms of Cornel West were correct. I think he was kind of like making them in the least persuasive possible way. But like, I think some of what like the premises are correct. But like, it's like, okay, wait a second. Like, you don't like Cornel West because there's like too much identity politics or whatever, but like RFK is cool, right? Like, because they like, oh yeah, because like RFK is what, like a good socialist? I mean, what do we like? How is like make it make sense to me, right? Like, this is it's like, oh yeah, so Cornel West isn't talking about, isn't like emphasizing the centrality of class enough. But this guy who like doesn't even support Medicare for all and like is like super duper pro-Israel and whatever. It's like he's cool because he's anti-establishment.
Yeah, I guess if you're
anti-establishment because he just carries around carcasses of animals at living places.
The establishment is always trying to get him to like follow basic sanitary laws. It's
if your top issue is vaccines, then I guess you're an RFK.
I guess, right, which is also pretty amazing. It's like I saw there's a I know we're getting to be time to get off, but I saw this. Maybe I can even find this. We can just play the beginning of it. So like the first 30 seconds of this. So this is Dennis Prager. This is something he just put out. Says, I think this is it, right? Yeah, good.
The people who won't say ladies and gentlemen are the people who are voting for Kamala Harris. But worse, much worse, vast numbers of Americans who think it is absurd not to say ladies and gentlemen will also vote for the Democratic nominee.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe some people in that second group think that this is an extremely unimportant issue. It's yeah, wow. Right. It's like, well, I think that Trump is really bad on unions and climate change, and he tried to steal the 2020 election, and he tore up the Iran deal, and he's awful on labor stuff, but he does approve of the phrase "ladies and gentlemen" when you're like introducing somebody, and that's just my top issue. I'm sorry, like I have it's like, look, I would like it if we did something about climate change, but like if the trade-off is somebody who like prefers some other phrase that maybe I find slightly cringy to "ladies and gentlemen,"
guys, gals, and non-binary pals.
Yeah. If the person who says guys, gals, and non-binary pals instead of "ladies and gentlemen," look, I don't care how good they are on all those issues I just rattled off. Sorry, deal breaker, right? That's the I got to go with the "ladies and gentlemen" candidate. That's the I don't care how much like environmental degradation is going to destroy our infrastructure as a society. All that matters to me is during however many months or years we have left. When I hear people like introduce a speaker or start an event, it's just very important to me to hear the phrase "ladies and gentlemen."
Yeah, I love how he's just like, how could we be losing these people? There must be a messaging failure on our part,
This might actually help me on Thursday whenever I'm going down to the city council meeting for the push that resolution to get the defunding of Israel. Saying that this. To help endorse that. Maybe that's how I should start everything, and just say "ladies and gentlemen." And I will win over all the Zionists.
You say, because some of us can still say that. Some of us still say "ladies and gentlemen" around here, and say "ladies and gentlemen, Merry Christmas." I know it's November, but it's important to start.
Yeah, exactly. I am so unbowed by this that I can not only say "Merry Christmas," I can say "Merry Christmas" in early November. If Starbucks has started selling their peppermint mochas, I will fucking say "Merry Christmas." Yeah. That's my line. It's just amazing because it's like, look, I know there are people who would who wouldn't use "ladies and gentlemen," they'd use one of these other phrases or whatever. Also, though, like the number of if you didn't call attention to it, like the number of people in the world, like the number of super duper progressive people in the world who would object to starting with "ladies and gentlemen" is like, it's a rounding error. It's like nobody, right? Nobody cares about that. Like that's it's like, oh my God, can you fucking believe this guy said "ladies and gentlemen"? It's like, no, that'll be fine. Like I don't, I don't know. I guess I think that it's just such a weird. It's like, this is your top issue. So yes, if your top thing is that you're still extremely mad about vaccine policy in 2021, then I guess RFK is your guy, right? But I mean, it's like I don't know. I mean, like I would think that even within the subcategory of healthcare, like even if we let's just acknowledge for the sake of argument, right, that let's pretend that the Jimmy Dore view about all that stuff is 100% correct. It's like, okay, well, you're also talking about something from 3 years ago that's like not really a live thing. I don't would you maybe prefer the candidate who's less likely to try to cut Medicaid?
Well, apparently he might try to ban vaccines. So we have a lot of work to be done. I was gonna say real quick, because this is apparently fresh content. I think I don't know what this is gonna be. I just saw someone tweet having a normal one with Tucker, so maybe we can kind of let him close out. Yeah,
exactly. Okay.
On February 20th, 2023, I was attacked in my bed by a spiritual being and clawed and left bleeding and scarred. And do I understand what happened? No, of course I don't. I don't really understand anything, but that did happen to me. I don't care if people believe me or not. It did. And I think it was just a momentary glimpse of something that's happening at all times. which is, again, this war between forces that we can't see, but that has been ongoing and has been, in fact, described by every culture since the beginning. Every culture that we know about has described this battle. And in fact, it's been the basis of every religion. It's certainly the basis of Christianity, which I think is true. By the way, factually speaking, I think Christianity is true. But even if you don't, I think you can acknowledge that we're the only culture that hasn't been really absorbed in thinking and talking about this. Not since we dropped the atomic bomb in Nagasaki, the second one in August of 1945, and decided that we were gods and the God himself no longer existed. Since then, we have been a secular society, and that's why we're now being destroyed, in my view.
So nobody can see his dogs? Is that what he's trying to say? His dogs are invisible?
I don't know, man.
Were those his dogs in that previous video?
I mean, I really appreciate that, you know, I mean, we have given him credit where credit is due in past episodes for thinking that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bad. He now seems to be linking this up with the demon issue.
Yeah, it turned us all atheists, apparently.
Yeah, that's a little confusing, but I don't.
And that's why it was bad.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's just more about what it did for us versus what it did to them. No, I don't know. Maybe he
yeah.
It is a little weird to kind of like center, you know, our own like,
Yeah.
especially that it made us more secular. I want to see some statistics.
Yeah, I want to see some evidence for that, the secularization as a result of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, I would think on the face of it that it's like, you know, right, like post-war prosperity, more people going to college, you know, people not like living in more closely knit neighborhoods, you know, whatever. It was the bomb. I guess I do just want to give him credit. Like maybe we can close out on this note.
Yeah.
I do just want to give him credit for the one thing that I think he said in that clip that we just watched that was absolutely correct, which was, and I quote, "I don't understand anything." You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive post-games on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.